Hi, preschool peeps.
Hello.
In case you've lost track, I think it's Thursday.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I
I
can't
don't
keep
know.
track anymore.
Oh my God, I don't know.
No idea.
Okay.
I don't even know if it matters
What's it?
anymore.
It's going to be the Memorial Day weekend, Allison.
Oh, yay. That came
Yeah.
quick. Good. I'm glad.
Alrighty. All right. Anyway, so Allison and I today want to kind of pose a question. And it's this question. In all this talk about what happens with schools, what are schools going to do? I'm just sort of wondering, is anyone discussing the teachers?
People
And I'm not saying they're not. I know
Yeah.
on behalf of Allison and her colleagues. I'm not saying that it's not a discussion. I do believe and hope that those people who are trying to figure out what to do with our educational settings are taking the teachers into consideration. I just don't see it as part of the conversations that I see on social media and that I've heard people having, like just not people who are involved in the process, other people, right?
Yeah.
I think, and again, I certainly hope people who are involved in the process are sitting together saying, well, what about the teachers? Because here's some truth. Statistics that I read show that a third of teachers are in high risk categories for becoming very ill from this virus.
Yeah.
There are also teachers who have elderly people that they have to care for and be with. And there are also teachers who have to be concerned about exposing their families. And I understand that they are considered part of the sort of like the first responder group, right?
Yeah.
Where doctors and nurses also have had to worry about this.
Right.
I think they're not the same. What am I looking for here? They're not the same.
What's the right word?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
But I know what you're trying to say.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
We can't close hospitals and we can't close doctors' offices, but we have closed schools. So,
right. And doctors take the oath, right? Which is part of their.
Oh, that's true.
Right? They take an oath that says, whereas teachers don't.
Isn't their oath more like do no harm?
I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
I'm not a doctor.
I'm just going to say this.
Just saying. But
I'm just going to say this. On the many, many threads that I have read where people are debating, and they're debating, should the children go back or not, I would love it if somebody mentioned the plight of the teachers and the administrators, not just the teachers, the administrators too.
Yeah.
This is a very complex thing. Now, schools that I work with and as a consultant and organizations that I work with are taking that into consideration. They are talking about some of them more the physical health, some of them more the mental health, but somewhere in the conversations, they're discussing the adults.
That makes me feel better because I think up until this point, when I see that there's not a lot of talk about the teachers, it's been giving me a lot of anxiety of like, are they just going to open and not think of how it affects us as the adults that work in the school? They're just thinking about how we can lessen the children's exposure, but what about everybody else? And so that makes me feel better that you work with people who are discussing it, because up until now I don't know. And it gives me anxiety about like, wait, I'm here too. Like, hello, like, you know,
and you know, the decisions may be to open and I get that.
Okay, yeah.
It would just be nice to know, or here's what would be nice. It would be nice, again, in those threads or in the conversations that I've been having, to have somebody say, what about the teachers, folks?
Yeah.
What about the administrators? What about the adults? There's so much online now about drawing these boxes on the ground to put young children in and how they're not going to be able to share, and they're not going to be able to do this, and they're not going to be able to do that. And in a prior episode, was it a prior episode that you were talking about teachers afraid to use the restroom if they go back to work?
Yes, my coworker's afraid to use the restroom, the staff bathroom, when we go back. Like if we go back to work, she does not want to use a staff bathroom unless it is cleaned after every single person. Like she feels like that's a big exposure area. How are you going to help somebody like that has that kind of anxiety? You know, like, so are you thinking of those things? You
I don't
know,
know.
like,
Do you think that this is going to be the same sort of issue in all other workplaces as other workplaces begin to
how are
reopen?
they doing it in other workplaces? How?
They're going to have to figure out ways, I guess. Maybe
Yeah.
they're able to ensure that things are going to be sanitized in some businesses, or
Right.
I don't know. Our last episode was about all the personal decisions people are going to have to make, and it kind of falls
Right.
along those lines too.
Yeah.
You hope, I think those of you who don't work in the field of education, if your employer is going to be reopening, you're hoping they're learning and putting certain safeguards in place, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
and I think that teachers need to know what the conversation is about the safeguards for them. And I don't think it's been talked about all that much.
It hasn't been, at least in my experience. Maybe it is in other places, but for me, I haven't heard that. And that's what's giving me so much anxiety about going back. It's like, I've heard like all this, like, oh, maybe we'll do half days every other day kind of thing for the kids. Okay, but I'm still going to be exposed to both groups of children, so like, how is that going to work? And nobody will say this is how it's going to work for the teachers.
Well,
This is how we're
maybe that's all part of the reason why where we live, reopening education is the last phase
right.
of a reopening, and
Yeah,
I
'cause
think
it's going to take a
it's gonna be a
lot
while.
of thought. It's going to take
Yeah.
a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of money, because it's just a lot. It's a lot to figure out. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. When people are just like, beaches are reopening, open up the doors of school. I think, oh my God, it's so complex. People don't even have any idea. It is
It's
so
so
complex.
different than opening up the beach. Opening up the
Yes.
beach, if I chose to go to the beach, I can wear a mask. I can stay 6 feet away from people I don't know. I can not go in the water. I can do all these things. When it comes to school and you have this mass amount of people indoors, like, there's a lot of like things you can't control once you're in that, like,
That's why they're putting together these panels of
Yeah.
so many people to try and figure it out in different states.
yeah.
They're putting together these large groups to try and figure out, I don't even know how they'll come to an agreement. We've said that before. But they put together these large groups of people to try and figure this out because it is so complex, right from transportation to how you function through your day to how do we protect the children and the adults.
Yeah, it's the amount of supplies too that the
The
children
supplies,
share a lot of supplies, and now
Yes.
they can't
share supplies, can't share toys.
which means there's no library,
share-
there's no books, there's no
Right.
nothing. There's nothing.
Can't share books, can't share toys,
Yeah.
can't share space,
Can't share a pencil if you want to. Like,
Right.
there's just like, how are you passing classes for that? Like, how are you
doing that?
How are you doing that? There's
and
a
I
lot
think-
that goes into it. When you go to the beach, it's just like, okay, find a spot and stay 6 feet away. Like, there's a lot of other things going on at a school that need to be thought out.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And everyone has a different level of risk tolerance, right?
Yes.
People have different levels of risk tolerance. And I think that's part of the conversation about the adults too. Teachers and administrators alike, they're going to have to gauge people's risk tolerance to figure out what people are going to decide even about what they want to do with their lives now. This has, the level at which this event has ripped people's lives wide open and into shreds is unbelievable. And I think we're going to see that should we come closer to opening education. I don't know. I
think there's this thought in like education, and not just education. I think in a lot of workplaces of like, oh, people will just be so happy to be back and and some will. Yes, that's true. But some won't, so, and that's across all workplaces. Some people but I think there's this attitude from employers a lot, like, oh, they'll just be so grateful to have their job back that we don't have to worry about all this other stuff. You know what I mean? They'll just be so pleased to be back. And it's like, no, no, like, and we shouldn't stand for that either. In any workplace.
It seems to be coming down in the workplaces to health versus money. And that's a terrible thing.
And that's you shouldn't have to make that choice.
Thing. I know, it's a terrible, terrible thing.
There was an article, but I wish I saved it because I only read part of it, and then I walked away from the computer and then it was gone. It was like a lot of families have to choose between my child or my paycheck? And how do you make that decision? How? Like
I
you
don't
can
know.
send your child back to school so you can go back to work, or back to childcare so you can go back to work, or you could choose not to go back to work so that you can care for your child so they don't have to be put in the school, but then
And
you
it's
have
the
no money
same.
to, yeah,
It's the same for teachers, folks. It's the same. They are parents. They are
yeah,
someone's children. They are caregivers. They have a whole life outside that school building. And I
yeah.
think that that's what I'm not seeing in social media, is people taking into consideration that teachers and administrators are people too.
Yes, I'm a
They have
person
whole
too.
lives to worry about.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I know this is the third time I'm saying it, but I'm hoping people who listen to this podcast do it.
yeah,
Look for these posts on social media about reopening school and just pose this one question. What about the adults in the setting? What about them?
yeah,
And see if anyone, like, does that make everybody stop? Like, I
yeah,
feel like it's going to make people go, wait, what?
yeah.
Because the conversation has been so centered around the children.
The children, yeah. But
And I agree, it needs to be
it
centered
needs
around
to
children,
be.
but it also needs to take into consideration all of the adults and the
Yeah,
impact on the
there's
adults.
so many adults that need to be there in order for you to open for those children. You know,
Not just teachers and administrators.
not just teachers and administrators, custodians, school nurses, school
bus
counselors,
drivers,
bus drivers, special needs. Like, I mean, it's just like there's so much.
right? Therapists, clinicians.
Yeah, clinicians, secretaries. You know,
yes. You're right. Secretaries,
there's
office
so
personnel.
Yeah, there's so many people that go into that.
I mean, really.
That run, you know, for the children. But you need to take into consideration all those people. And what are you going to do if a group of those people says, you know what, I don't feel safe coming back right now? Can you do that without losing your job?
Allison, what are you going to do if they go back? What are you going to do if they go back and a group of those people get sick? Now what?
Right.
Now who's running your school? Now who's cleaning up in your school? Who's running the school?
What's the protocol if someone gets sick? Do you close down for another month? Clean everything up?
I don't know.
Hopefully it goes away. I mean, you got to have some sort of protocol.
They'll come up with something, I'm sure. But
if you get sick through work, then what? I mean, I don't know how that works. But,
I have no idea.
I have no idea. If you're going back to work, whether it's in education or whatever you do for a living, that's what you kind of have to think of. Like, what happens if I do get sick? What happens if someone else in my building gets sick? What happens if I'm carrying it now and going to, you know, carry it home? What happens if I don't go to work and I don't have money? Like, it's too much, too many.
All right, so here's what I want. I'm going to change what I said. Here's what I want people to do on social media posts. Just randomly start to put, what about the teachers? What about the secretaries? What about the bus drivers? What about the cafeteria workers? What about the custodians? What about, what's somebody else? What about, who did I leave out? What about the counselors? What about the therapists? What about other clinicians? What about school nurses? I want everybody to start to put the what abouts in these posts and see what people say, because I think that it's become myopic. I think it's become very narrow in people's focus about what children need.
Yeah.
And I think that I would like to say, on behalf of all those groups of, 20 to 50 people trying to figure out education in different cities and states, I'd like to say, we on this podcast see your hard decisions. And we are trying to get people to go on to the social media and be like, this is a more complicated decision than you're making it out to be. What about the custodian? What about the bus driver? What about the teacher? What about the teacher's aide? What about the paraprofessional? So here's what I want people to do who are listening to the podcast. Who did we leave out?
Yeah.
Who did Allison and I leave out? Because educational settings from early childhood on up require a lot of people, and they're very complicated. So what did we leave out? What do you feel like in the national conversation taking place? What do you feel like is not being taken into consideration by a lot of people? So comment, contact us on our contact form on howpreschoolteachersdoit.com or our Facebook page, which is How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast. Please let us know who's been left out of this conversation that you're seeing comments on, and let's all get into these comments and be like, what about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So, Allison,
Yeah.
I wish you and all our podcast peeps a restful and perhaps happy Memorial Day weekend. Safe, mostly
Yeah.
safe.
Safe, but mostly safe. Yes.
We bought a new gas grill, knowing that summer is going to be a lot more here than ever before. So that's what we'll be doing.
Good for you, though. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you very much. My husband and I had the same thought at the same time that we should get a new gas grill because where are we going? So we might as well make summer pleasant, right?
Got to try something.
I
feel like my friend posted on social media the other day. He goes, I just drove by a family that was sunbathing on their front porch. And normally I'd be like, huh? But instead I was like, good for you. And I'm like, yep, that's going to be summer, people. That's our summer right there.
That's it. Right.
The front yard is your vacation.
Yes, it is. You give staycation a whole new meaning.
Yep. We're doing it. We're rocking it. We're
going to rock it. Okay, preschool peeps, go rock your Memorial Day weekend. And we'll catch you soon on How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast.
Yeah.
Bye.